So today, guys, we have Dr. Thamil Venthan Ananthavinayagan, who is more of an Anna to me than just a guest. So he is currently working as a professor at Statal at the University of Milan. Is also working as a senior civil servant in the Irish government as well. So today we're just going to have a conversation about the Tamil diaspora, how we can go forward, the directions that we've attempted to take, where we may have failed, how to make the most out of them. So just pass it over to Anna, who will just introduce himself and we'll get started.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Thambi. As a matter of fact, you're my namesake, right? So my name is Thamil Venthan Ananthavinayagan, or for the sake of completeness, Dr. Thamil Venthan Ananthavinayagan. I was born and raised in Germany, in the middle of Europe. My parents obviously both are from Ulam, my father being from Yarlparnam, and my mom, Amma, coming from Parley. So I'm a trained lawyer. I studied law in Germany, in the Netherlands, and in Ireland. Did my undergrad studies in Germany, and then my postgrad studies in the Netherlands, and then my PhD in Ireland. I've been working the last 10 years, more than 10 years in academia, as an academic and professor in the Republic of Ireland. For 2, 3 years, I moved to the UK and I was working as a professor academic at the University of Nottingham, and then eventually came back 3 years ago to switch a little bit things up, and now I'm not a full-time academic anymore, and I'm a full-time civil servant in the Irish government, a senior civil servant, and I'm advising the Department of Justice in Ireland and the Minister on Asylum Law. Yeah, but as you said yourself there, I still work as an academic. I have different professorships in Ireland, in Italy, and in India. The one that you just mentioned, Statale in Milano, another one in ESCP in Torino, Maynooth University in Ireland, and then 2 universities in India, Voxen and Chandigarh, and as a matter of fact, also at the Law Society of Ireland, so the institution that trains the solicitors in the country. So this is my academic background, and that's what I do. So yeah, it's my great pleasure to be here and to be together with my brother, my Thambi, and join his wonderful podcast.
Yes, thank you, Anna. So, guys, a little bit of background in terms of how we actually met. We worked together in a Tamil organization, and we done a little bit of work, which is predominantly the background or the foundation for why this discussion has come about. We have many organizations, way more abbreviations than we can even remember or say again. Right, they all start with a T, which we know. But basically, every couple of years, we get a new organization, someone comes, a project comes, it sounds very promising. Unfortunately, as some young people like to say, there are no tangible results. Okay, there is nothing for us to actually point towards and say, wow, this is what the organization's actually done. So what that ends up doing is we end up attacking individuals. We say they're a fraud, blah, 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 and then it goes down, certain rabbit holes that seem to just keep repeating itself. So basically, Anna, just to start it off, my first question is, how do we, as a Tamil diaspora, right, attempt to keep a solid front, right, while going forward? I mean, we're living in 2026, politically, anything is possible, right? We can literally see it in terms of what's going around the world.
mm,
How do we stick together? How do we criticize each other without it turning into an attack?
mm. So already um, you know, extremely powerful question, and it's very loaded, obviously. Um, I mean, the great A. Sivanandan said once upon a time, um, communities are not built on race, but they are built on struggle. And I believe that I think that is our starting point, that we understand that our community as Tamils is rooted in struggle, and that we understand that we are all coming from the same root, the same origin of that very struggle. Um, Being a scholar in the area of TWILE, Third World Approaches to International Law, um, that which believes this particular movement in international believes that international law as it stands is deeply colonial, and it reproduces the colonial hierarchies through its modern international legal institutions. Um, I think the Tamils have lost way in the sense that we came abroad, and we forgot perhaps what struggle is. We became quite quickly accustomed um, to the um, to the illusion of wealth and the illusion of capitalism, trying to distract us from the actual struggle, um, and then in consequence, building our own organizations for our own purposes and certain egoistic purposes, and then engaging in something like envious cannibalism, if I can put it that way. How can we target each other? How can we pull each other down? How
Mm,
can we be better as someone else? Now, I think the real idea of being a Tamil and who is invested in the struggle of the Tamils is the one who believes in brotherhood and sisterhood and the greatness of the wealth of our community that is coming out of colonial struggle.
mm,
Um, we Tamils come out of colonial struggles. We fought against the Portuguese, we fought against the Dutch, we fought against the British, and we are now facing, a situation where an external colonizer was just only replaced by an internal colonizer. And I think that Tamils need to reinvigorate and galvanize themselves to understand that the actual topics that are important are not targeting each other for the
mm.
purposes of enhancing ourselves, but in improving our society abroad, but also back home in the homeland.
For sure. And I mean, it's just going to lead on to my next question. It's something that I've already spoken to you about a lot, right? In the
Mm.
past 5 years, probably,
Yeah,
is that we as a people and now we were known for the respect we show, the respect we
yeah,
hold, right?
yeah.
We've always traditionally been known for being hardworking. Now, hardworking because we want to work hard, not as a performance, right? It was
Mm,
because of our own ethics.
mm,
We'll just do it because I want to do it, right? We used to do
mm,
it for our father's name, for our mother's name.
mm. Yeah.
Okay. Nowadays, right, we are definitely in a post-war society.
Mm,
However, we've lost that cheeky behavior that we used to have, and now we've become quite sarcastic, right? We've
mm,
become quite dark, and we quickly
mm,
have forgotten the
mm,
nature of the reason why we made jokes in the first place.
mm,
Right. And I like, to be completely honest with you, I have uncles back home
mm,
who would joke in an empowering way,
mm.
right? They'll be like, oh, you're just like your dad. You're a cheeky guy. You're going to cause some issues, like stuff like this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Unfortunately, when I speak to
yeah.
other Tamil people who are
Mm,
on around the same age, right, I
mm,
don't really get that same type of energy from them.
mm,
Generally, it's a very sarcastic. It's like, oh, you think you're gonna do something?
mm,
Oh,
mm,
nanga siya the willing, ninga siya podielo.
mm,
Like this type
mm,
of dialogue is what we get.
mm,
So how do we move away from this, I'm the real one, you are just a foreigner,
mm,
right? Or even back home, even the youth who are trying to do something, whether
mm,
that be because of their religion or caste,
mm, mm,
right? Now, like people have the pulikori behind them, but then they talk
mm,
about caste.
mm,
How do we
mm,
raise awareness in a way where it doesn't sound like we're ranting or venting, but in a way
mm,
where we educate our people of all ages? How can we
mm,
actually even attempt to do something like this?
yeah. Yeah. So I totally agree with you, this situation where, we are somehow pulled down and not valued enough in the attempts that we make to raise awareness and um, work towards a ulam and a society for our people back home, but also raise the level of solidarity here. I think, look, um, the first step is that despite of all the organizations that we have, I mean, we talked about that informally
Mm,
in the past. We have, and it's not of any use to mention any of them, but
mm,
there are dozens of them in Canada, there are dozens of them in Switzerland, there are dozens of them in the UK, Germany, France, and wherever the diaspora is currently. I think how do we educate and build a momentum? I look. I think there are some good examples that different other communities have um, achieved,
mm,
and they built allies around their cause. And the I think the most important one is probably are the Palestinians.
mm,
The Palestinian cause became eventually the battlefield, the ultimate battlefield against imperialism and the ultimate battlefield against colonialism. And the Palestinians, like the Irish, here where I live, share a lot of similarities with what the Tamils are. Okay,
mm,
it's not being simply a brand or simply you know just a fashionable kind of appeal to younger people, but I think people understood with Palestine or the Irish cause in the early 70s, 80s, 90s that there is a bigger issue at stake where we are in the position we need to educate each other and we need to build also alliances beyond the Tamil ambit. And I think the Tamils are currently in need of that alliance and the coalition. We need this coalition with the Palestinian people and understand that we come all from the same colonial struggle in order to raise awareness. And there was this awareness once upon a time
mm,
when we struggled in Ulam. The posters of, our struggles are interconnected between Ulam and Palestine. There was this awareness. We, I think, lost also the momentum to build genuine alliances with movements abroad,
mm,
which can work with us. We turned ourselves rather as beneficiaries of a white hegemonic system. And we are rather, assisting that particular hegemonic system in order to improve our own material conditions abroad.
mm,
What I would like to see is we are building these political alliances in the diaspora. We are building these alliances with other colonial struggles, anti-colonial struggles, um, in order to create a momentum that is based on activism, but roots into a more intellectual discussion. Okay, and that is the way forward. I strongly believe. I don't think we can work in silos. And
Mm,
currently, all these organizations, they are just self-serving. Let's be honest about it. They are self-serving. They work in silos. They try to attack each other, and it's not helping.
mm,
It's not helping the cause. The cause must be more coherent. It must be widespread, and it must be based on political activism that goes beyond race, beyond caste, um, beyond religion. This is a much bigger cause, namely the cause um, against the force that denies our dignity to live on the land of the Tamils.
mm. I mean, and we have, it's been 17 years since the end of the war, right?
Yeah. Mm,
Constantly people say this, okay?
mm,
They say it's been blah, 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 it's been this many years. Every year, the year goes further and further. We
mm,
as a group don't really know what we're doing, okay? And now, like,
yeah.
the organizations have become really good at waffling, is the easiest way for me to say. They're
Mm,
really good at filling up the language, right?
yeah.
Sometimes you read the manifestos, and you're like, wow, this is amazing, right? But
Yeah.
when you read it for real, you know this is going nowhere. It doesn't actually even mean anything,
Yeah.
right? And that's going on in one direction. Then on the other direction, we have this split in the generations, right?
Mm,
Where the older generation seem to be a little bit more, like you said, they work in silos, right?
mm,
Some of them are definitely self-serving, while
mm,
some of them honestly are sweethearts.
mm,
Like from my own experiences, they're lovely people, but
mm,
they are so paranoid that they don't know what they're supposed to do.
mm,
Okay, and they don't want to trust anyone. And the moment you say
mm,
something, they will
mm,
distance themselves from you. They think automatically you're working with some foreign government. I wish,
mm,
okay, Anna,
mm,
honestly, I
mm.
wish these foreign governments were giving me money for me to make this type of
Yeah.
charitable projects,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's going
Yeah.
on in one direction.
Yeah.
Then we have the youth who are massively misinformed,
Mm,
right? We have a
mm,
whole generation. Imagine it's 17 years since the end of the war. There are 15,
mm,
16-year-olds who weren't even alive when the war
mm.
was going on. And
Yeah.
they're literally getting the information from TikTok, YouTube,
Yeah.
Instagram,
Yeah.
right? Some odd Wikipedia post,
Yeah.
okay? And they become very easily manipulated. Okay,
Yeah.
and now like I would like to consider myself still a youth. I'm not going to say how old I am, but I have been part of these organizations since I was 16 years old. And I will tell you,
Yeah.
at that time, I was definitely pulled left and right.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't have a clear direction.
Yeah.
And I feel really responsible for the youth now.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do we keep them afloat? For them to be
Mm,
able to be critical thinkers. Because information exists, but we need to
mm,
consider both sides.
mm, mm,
Okay, like for
mm,
instance, and I'll tell you one thing. There was a
mm,
documentary made by Channel 4 regarding the end of the war.
mm,
Okay, multiple
mm,
Tamil charities
mm,
edits out the documentary where it could
mm,
show that, you know, Tamil organizations or
mm,
LTT or whoever it is done
mm.
something, and they make it very much like the Sinhalese hate us.
Yeah.
And that's the picture that they paint. Okay,
Yeah.
and this is something that we also spoke about.
Yeah.
They make it seem as if all Sinhalese people hate us, right? They want
Yeah.
to kill us and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then we said this last time where in London at
Mm,
Excel, Marvin Renal, right? They
mm.
put up the pulikodi.
Yeah.
Before they pull out the pulikodi, they pull out the Union Jack, right? And they sing God Save the Queen. When the Queen was alive, that's when I went last. So that's all I can quote.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So how do we move forward in a way
Yeah.
where even for ourselves we know this is genuine?
Yeah. Yeah. You asked me now two big questions. Now the third big question, and while I'm talking, I'm even reflecting on all the answers that I gave, and I'm still not happy fully with everything what I said. But look, because it's such a heated, controversial issue that we face in the diaspora. So how do you educate the youngsters? How do we give them the right, pathway to genuine information? And, how do we fight against disinformation? You made, so many good points. We live now in the 21st century. We have all these social media. We have TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, and whatever
Mm.
we have out there, YouTube, and all the older media as well. Obviously, there's like the possibility of manipulation. Um, Now, perhaps I start, and I'm, fully aware of the limitation in terms of time that we have. But I tell you a story very briefly that made me really think about how the Tamil youth is being educated,
Mm.
on the Tamil struggle and the genocide against the Tamils. Namely, this was, yeah, it was shortly after the war. Was a Samati that I attended in Germany. Was a Samati of, some family member who married into our family. And I was, playing with this little Tamil girl. She was like 4 or 5 years old, very young, super young. And, like I needed to keep her company while her parents were doing something else at the Samti. So I was there with her and some other young kids. And at some point she asked me, because I spoke to her in English, and obviously it was in Germany, so I spoke in German to others. There were some French kids, so Tamil French kids, so I spoke to them in French. And this girl was from the UK. Her
Mm.
parents lived in the UK, and they came over for the Samati. And she asked me in English, Anna, why do you speak so many languages? Can you
Mm.
tell me what languages you speak? And I said, I speak Tamil, obviously. I
Mm.
speak English. I speak French. I speak German. And I would like to study Singular,
Mm.
because it's, a language of the island.
Mm.
And I want to understand how the Sinhalese people think, like
Mm.
understanding the language means to understand the people.
For sure.
I mean, I didn't say it to her in that way. I said, I would like to understand the singular
Mm.
people. And that girl who was smiling all the time, suddenly her face turned quite grim.
Mm.
And she said to me, but that's the language of the enemy.
Mm.
Um, and that moment, like, it shocked me, and I told the story so often to Tamil people in the diaspora, and they were like, they justified it, and they said, oh, that's normal. That's how we have to see it.
Mm.
Now, the point is, like, I've seen the argument that I want to make is we have brainwashed the youth for too long.
Mm.
Um, and that we think that they are all Sinhalese are bad, that all Sinhalese are not allies. There are Sinhalese that are allies, and I know them. I've met them, who are genuinely concerned about the cause of the Tamils.
Mm.
Um, we are not sufficiently looking beyond all, issues that happened during the Tamil struggle and the civil war itself.
Mm.
We're not critically questioning the ways how certain methods of warfare were carried out. We are not criticizing and questioning it. We like to point out to the failures of the TULF, the Kootenai leaders,
Mm.
but we don't want to talk about what the Iyakangers did wrong, in particular the one Iyakam. The United Nations and leading human rights experts have pointed out to wrongs committed under international law also by the LTTE. You
Mm.
know, the point that I'm making is the picture that we paint is not rooted in objectivity, and it's not rooted in truth. It's not rooted in intellectual conversation. It is rather rooted in blind fanaticism, and that is something that is hindering us. It's impeding us
Mm.
to also, reinvent ourselves as the Tamil movement.
Mm.
because we are still, you know, prisoners of our past, and we don't want to leave that prison. We have the
100%.
key. We have the key to open, the prison and leave it, but we don't want to because we want to be the victim. We
It's
always want to
comfortable.
be. It's comfortable. It's
Mm.
comfortable to be the victim. It's comfortable to be, you know, no, I don't want to question myself. So I think to answer your question, Thambi, there needs to be a genuine, say, people's tribunal that is looking at the Tamils, like a people's tribunal that we have seen, like, in terms of Russell Tribunal. There was a, people's tribunal for Sri Lanka, but we have to have a people's tribunal for the diaspora itself. And I know that it's going to be so politicized. It's going to be so, uh, you know, critical and being attacked probably, but probably we need
Mm.
something like now let's come forward and let's have a conversation. Let's have an open conversation. And that needs to usher in some sort of new movement. And the reason why, I mentioned after your second question, the Palestinians is the Palestinians have built, intellectual movements around the world that are
Mm.
so powerful. Like when we talk about the Tamils, who is like, a credible voice of the intellectuals of the Tamils abroad? I wonder who that is. I don't know. There might be some of these, certain. I know certain names that would put up their hand.
Mm.
Um, but if you look at the Palestinians, like one of the first names comes to my attention is Nura Erekat in the
Mm.
U.S. Um, who is like a formidable voice for the Palestinian cause. So we need to have this open intellectual conversation, which is also reflective of our own past, and that is then building, different institutions, different think tanks, different leadership um, roles, where Tamils are from different areas of the planet are working together for such a cause, for the Tamil cause. But always reflective,
Mm.
rooted in truth, and critical self-reflection.
100%. And I mean, as you were going through this, right, with the fact that we are so comfortable being the victim, right? Um, there's two time periods which are very important for the Tamil diaspora, one being July and the other being November. Okay, and
Mm,
of course, May as well,
mm,
right? May is very important.
mm,
But for me as a youth, I
mm.
remember how July was very heavy for us, right?
Yeah,
Because of the pogroms. And
yeah,
then we have November with Mavirenal.
yeah.
Okay. And as a child, I remember how I don't want to use the word advertise, but it was so plastered in your face, right? I was 6 years old watching pictures of people being stripped. Right? There was literally
Mm,
pictures on newspapers which were shown to us when we were like 5, 6 years old, not by our parents, right?
mm,
And I want to be completely honest with you, my parents shielded me from all of this. Okay.
mm,
But I still saw
mm,
these leaflets in Tamil shops of four,
mm,
5-year-old children being hanged, right? And it would say, Sri Lankan army done this.
mm,
Okay. And
mm,
that's the fire that we grew up with, right? That's the
mm,
anger that we grew up with. We didn't know how to express it. So we'd go to
mm,
protest, we'd make noise, right?
mm,
We'll say this, that, and the other. And then, like you
mm,
said, self-reflection. What does it do?
mm,
Nothing,
mm,
right? I can
mm,
say all this stuff here, but it's my people
mm,
back home who are going missing. Okay,
mm,
to this day, right?
mm,
2026,
mm,
right? Maybe not the government is taking them, right? But there's
mm,
still organizations out there who do
mm,
target individuals who actually think critically. And
yeah,
then there's something that was said to me,
mm,
right, in an history lesson in 2012, where they were talking about Animal Farm,
yeah,
right? And that really. imprinted and left a burn in my head, right? And it was about
mm,
how these animals they came together and in terms of the rule that was pushed onto them, like in terms of
yeah,
how they were oppressed. And then they go
yeah,
into positions of power and they done exactly what was done
yeah,
to them in the first place. And I
yeah,
can't help but see that happening in my people,
mm,
right? Whether that be in politics, in
mm,
businesses, in academia, wherever. Okay,
mm,
now, both of us have, obviously not as much as you, and but I have my experience within the law
mm,
area, right? And I've seen
mm,
firsthand the way my people squeeze our own,
mm, mm,
okay, in terms of asylum and immigration, the way that they're very big, famous lawyers, right? They will always turn up for these events and they were charging like
mm,
£15,000 for a delivery driver's
mm,
application for stay.
mm,
Okay,
mm,
so
mm,
basically, my question is
mm,
how do we get out of the victim mindset in a
mm,
realistic way,
mm,
right? Which is going to be lasting? And how do we stop with this whole oppressed becoming the oppressor? Okay, because
mm.
we're doing it right now back home as well. Okay, I know we
Yeah,
had this conversation where obviously online on the newspapers there's all this information about the Sinhalese taking our businesses and stuff like this,
yeah,
taking our jobs, right?
yeah,
We go to
yeah,
Trinco, there's businesses owned by Sinhala owners,
mm,
Muslim
yeah,
owners who are hiring Ulam Tamils.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, they're giving them a salary,
yeah,
right? And we go to Tamil hotels and they don't hire
yeah,
them because they're not from the same caste.
mm, mm,
Okay, so how do
yeah,
we go past this instead of it becoming an attack, instead of us pointing fingers and being like, this guy's
yeah,
a fraud and
yeah. How do we overcome the victim mindset? Look, the I think the for the last 17 years or so, basically ever since the war ended, but even I would even say before the war even ended, we would like to see ourselves as peoples that are unable to rescue themselves. We were always, you know, how shall I say, more concerned with ourselves than thinking of a broader spectrum of transformation. And another, short story. When I was in the homeland, and I was in Tironamale, we stayed. My wife, my mama, and I, we stayed in the area, and there was like one nice evening we went out to the beach to eat, and all these businesses by the beach in Tironamale were not owned by Tamil people, but they
mm,
were all owned by, I don't know. There was this one restaurant, beach surf school owned by a German. The
mm,
next to it there was a hotel that was owned by a Chinese. There was a condo owned by Sinhalese, and so on and so forth. The Tamils there, they said, who worked in these restaurants and all these businesses, they said, at least, when I asked them, do you feel comfortable, that our homeland is actually again occupied and we are working for other people?
mm,
They said, listen, yes, of course, we would like to own our own businesses and live in a dignified way and fashion, but we are currently happy that we have a job, and we are happy that we can earn the money and invest in our own families, and so on. We don't want to be the beggars and the victims forever.
mm,
We want to move past it. And one of the Tambis said, you know, what you can tell to anyone, abroad, and I'm thinking of one particular media
mm,
that is there in the UK. Um, instead of portraying us as victims and portraying us as people who are constantly in need for something, portray us as agents for our own change. Um, we don't need your activism because you're just using us as a pawn for your own political goals abroad, and we don't want that. You know, you're using our victimhood
Mm,
to push your status as a savior. And I think that is like the current toxic relationship that the diaspora has with the homeland. Like the savior status, and the savior status is only upheld if the victim is continued to exist. And we want the victim back home in order to be the savior here, right?
100%.
So how do we change it? Look, we need to portray ourselves not as saviors. We are not victims, but we are the agents of change.
Mm,
And the change needs to begin by collaborating, working together, reconciling, um, and building the bridges for the Ulam Tamils that they are the change that we need to come to our homeland and our people.
100%. It should be based on empowerment rather than us supposedly giving them
Yeah,
something. Like, I know, like, wow, yeah, we're not gonna get too much into what these organizations do, but the constant painting of us being underdogs
yeah,
and us constantly having to go an uphill battle doesn't do us any favors.
yeah,
Even psychologically, the moment you hear it, it's just like, why? There needs to be someone else that's got to come to do all this stuff for us. So, and I think we've touched on pretty much, the key points that I wanted to speak about. I've literally got bullet points here where I've literally written slogans and emotional speeches. We've covered that in terms of guiding the youth and the young people. I don't think, it's just the young people. I
mm,
know a lot of people who are in the 50s, 60s who are being
mm,
manipulated so much by YouTube videos, right? WhatsApp groups. Okay, they
yeah,
have WhatsApp groups for their schools, and someone will post some story and they will send money and that, right? In France, I know this,
mm,
okay?
mm,
They sent 20,000 euros to build one toilet,
mm,
okay, based off what was sent on a WhatsApp group. Okay, so issues like this are still going on. It's 2026.
mm,
Okay, reason being is because we don't know who to trust,
mm,
right? We might have one person whose nephew might be living in some part of the village and they will make a
mm,
Facebook post. All of a sudden, so much money goes through. Okay,
mm,
and that's the reality of where we're
mm,
getting our information from. So, what
mm,
I'm trying to say here is basically everyone needs to, one, think
mm,
critically.
mm,
Two, realistically, you have to go back home to see what's going
mm,
on.
mm,
Because if you just let other people paint a picture, whether that's through social media or through the news or wherever it be, that's all you're
mm,
going to see.
mm,
Okay. And that's going to cause you more psychological harm living in these international
mm,
countries, right? In the diaspora.
mm, mm,
So now, one, it's not really like a question itself. It kind of touches on so many different ideas, but it's
mm,
just a little bit tight for time. So I just thought,
mm,
just get a bit of your broad
mm,
understanding of it.
mm,
So whenever, I mean, for instance, there was Independence Day a couple of weeks ago, and
mm,
we had some of our people outside with a bully and they were shouting slogans and they were pointing at ambassadors and people who are working in the embassy.
mm,
Right, and they were saying this, that, and the other, right? These same groups, they go to United Nations, they go all around the world, they
mm,
push for international lawyers to write cases, okay?
mm,
So basically, my question is, how much does our understanding of human rights come from a Western perspective, right?
mm,
And how do we, like, from my understanding, at least from what I've seen, forcibly try to fit our issues into this framework to make
Mm.
it give us the results that we hope to gain?
Yeah. Excellent question again. Um, like as I said at the beginning of this podcast, the movement that I belong to, TWILE, um, thinks that international human rights law is just only a hegemonic tool, or is now reduced to a hegemonic tool to advance interests of, powerful post-colonial. Sorry, sorry. Is a tool to advance colonial interests and imperial interests of formerly colonizing states. Now, it used to be once upon a time, especially with the advent of the UDHR, the Universal Declaration, the International Covenants on Civil and Political Rights, and the International Covenants on Socioeconomic Rights. It used to be, a tool to empower formerly colonized nations and peoples of the global South, including the Tamils.
Mm,
Um, but now we are at a point that the movement, the human rights movement, and the human rights law, the law itself, and the human rights movement are solely there to project a particular ideology of human rights that is only self-serving, and anybody who wants to subscribe to the movements of the West, they need to align with the West and go
mm,
along with the policy of the West. And unfortunately, we see this in different contexts. We see this in Venezuela. We see this in Cuba. We see this in Iran, for example, as well, where certain diaspora groups, um, like the Tamils, are immediately subscribing to the Western interpretation of human rights and the Western imperial projection of human rights as it is.
mm,
So I think that what we need to do as Tamils is not to fall into this trap to think only because um, you know my enemy is the Sri Lankan government, and the best way I can keep control of the Sri Lankan government is to align with the Western state that is feeding me.
mm,
That is probably not the best approach, and I don't think that using that particular mindset of human rights is the right mindset, and the same human rights policy that many diaspora groups are subscribing to is the way forward. And I've seen this in Berlin. There's again, I'm not mentioning names. There's this one human rights organization or Tamil organization that works very closely with the German government. They subscribe to everything what they do and say.
mm,
Very questionable stuff that they subscribe to. I know this from few Tamil organizations in Canada, and few more in the UK that immediately align with whoever is in the Kanzleramt in Berlin, or Downing Street number 10, or whatever house of power is occupied currently. So instead of subscribing to the human rights policy that a particular house or power is projecting, we should rather focus on the indigenous and critical global south approaches to human rights that actually form the vision of human rights, which includes the vision of the Tamils, because we have contributed to the making of human rights as well.
mm. For sure. Yes, and I think this is going to be really, honestly, and I started this YouTube channel because
Mm,
I wanted to document the conversations I have with people, because I feel
mm,
like it's going to be useful for others in terms of
mm,
them setting up their thoughts, right? And this is something that I found, I don't think, I don't know how to really word it, but I think I am quite natural at creating a conversation in terms of getting
mm.
someone started and verbalizing their thoughts.
Yeah.
So whenever I come across the youth I always see myself in their eyes, right? I
mm,
always see them, they will see someone and they will think, wow, this is the
mm,
person I'm going to follow. Okay, or
mm,
they'll say like, oh, this guy looks like my uncle or like my older
yeah,
brother or something. Okay.
yeah,
I want them to have this type of information available so they know
mm,
what to think when they are given certain information,
mm,
right? Because passion and emotion can be very influencing on a young mind, okay,
mm,
even on an old mind, right? Doesn't
yeah,
matter.
mm,
But what really matters is that
mm,
with a bit of self-reflection, we'll be able to
mm,
piece the gaps,
mm,
right? Because in the heat of the moment, we can sit there and be like, yes, this is why it happened. This is the answer, blah, blah, blah. A couple
mm,
months down the line, we're like, wait, I'm not going anywhere with this, right?
yeah,
All I'm doing is causing more harm for my people, harm for
yeah,
myself, and
yeah,
possibly even for their families.
yeah,
So, and now, like, yeah, I think there is still a lot more to talk about,
mm,
right? So I think we'll give it some time.
yeah,
Yeah, we'll do a part two.
yeah,
But the key takeaway I got from this conversation, and pretty much every single time I talk to you, is
yeah,
that we need to sacrifice the victim mindset,
mm,
okay? Because it's really easy for us to identify in others.
mm,
We can see in others and we'll be like, okay, this guy is being a victim, this lady's being a victim, whatever it may be. But
yeah,
for us to really spend some time with ourselves and to really
yeah,
think like, wait a minute, right? I'm really comfortable, creating this story that I was a good person and someone didn't make the most out of it.
yeah,
And to keep it going forward because it's supposed to develop ourselves and the people. So yeah, that's where I think I'll bring it to an end.
perfect,
Listen,
Tombi. Thanks so much, Tombi.
thank you.
This was a very it's a conversation that made me think about although we had a chat in the days before and chatted, but something that I was not able to verbalize or articulate. I kept thinking about it, but made me now take some lessons away to think also myself about certain other issues
Mm,
that I had been facing in the diaspora. And hopefully, look, we can do a part two and we can explore a couple of things further.
for sure. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, and
Thank you so
yeah,
much, Tombi. Thank you.
yeah. Thank you. Okay.
Wonderful. Thanks.